Hello and welcome to Drummers Only Radio. Drummers Only is a specialist drum shop started by drummers for drummers.
With 2 locations, Glasgow and Leeds, we stock everything you need for your drumming journey.
I'm Chris, the shop manager for Glasgow.
And I'm Adam, the social media manager for the Drummers Only brand.
This podcast will be interviews, reviews,
And much, much more.
from the unique perspective of a drum shop. So like, subscribe,
And feel free to get involved.
Hello everybody.
Hi there everyone, how are we all doing?
Very well, how are you?
Yes, good. Yes,
So
good.
this is Drummers Only Radio episode 30.
Yes.
And we got to talk to our very own Gordon Ferguson.
Yes, we did. What a delightful conversation
Yes,
it was.
the man who has once been described as a human Swiss Army knife. Because he can do literally everything.
Literally everything.
We spoke to Gordon quite in depthly. He's been a live sound engineer and bass player for quite some time.
Yes.
So we had quite a good chat about all those things, and put the world to rights over some drum problems and what to do and
Absolutely. So in this, you're going to hear about mic placements, the do's and don'ts,
Mhm.
what it's like being a bass player working in a drum shop as well.
Indeed,
Yeah.
and all sorts of things such as that. So
Yes.
do enjoy episode 30 with our Gordon.
Yes, enjoy.
Thanks, guys. Hello,
Hi there.
Drummers
Hello.
Only Radio, episode 30.
30. Is it 30 already?
Yep,
Wow.
episode
That's-
30, which is
It's went by so quickly.
it's over 52 weeks.
Yeah. And who have we got on today?
We have our very own Gordon. Gordon
Hi,
Ferguson
Gordon.
is with us.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Not bad.
Thank you for coming on.
Very welcome.
How's-
I mean, I
is
was
it-
here anyway, so it's gonna feel easy.
Nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Is this like your first podcast experience?
First podcasting experience of
Right.
being behind
Yeah.
the
Okay.
podcast. But yeah, I have done podcasts before, but
Yeah.
not in front of the cameras.
Okay.
I've
right.
recorded them basically.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
We thought we would talk to Gordon because Gordon has a variety of experience in areas that we don't. Primarily live engineering
Mhm.
and also bass playing, which both are critical to a live drummer's performance.
Yes, absolutely.
So
As much as drummers like to slate bass players, we do need them.
yeah, they're kind of integral. The band, I can attest that a band sounds pretty lousy without them because I've had as the Gig Story podcast would let you know, I've had a horrible bass player story. So
Yes.
I would have had to play basically a whole set without one. So
Here's a question just off the bat.
Yes.
Have you guys played a gig together?
Yes.
yeah, that's how we met.
Is that... Oh,
Yeah.
Chris
such a
was-
meet cute.
Chris ended up depping for my wedding band many years ago.
2006.
I think we actually got you to dep before I'd even met you. I think.
Yeah, what happened is you came in looking for Paul,
Yeah, that's right.
and Paul wasn't there,
That's
so I juked a gig.
Oh,
I was
is
just
that
like, I'll do it. I was God will tell you, I was perhaps the keenest man in Keeneland.
Yeah, wow.
Wow.
That was amazing. Yeah, you came in, did the gig, and you're like, oh, next week we can bring my recorder and record the gig and all that. And it's like, Chris, this is a wedding.
It was like my first ever pro gig.
He didn't tell us that though.
No, I
No,
didn't.
of course,
but
he kept it
I
totally
learned
cool.
60 songs in like a week. Like I hadn't done anything like that before, and I was expecting 10 songs or something. And Gordon sends me a set list through, and I was like, okay.
Oh, wow.
It was great. He learned them all so well, but we were kind of everything was so fast. It was
Aye.
like the whole 60 songs were gone. Like the first half, I'm like, oh my god,
Let's-
what do we do? Chris,
There
calm
was
down, calm down.
there was a chocolate. I remember there was a chocolate fountain
Oh yeah, that
at
was
the
it.
gig. It was the Bothwell Bridge Hotel.
Oh, no way,
Oh, no,
that's
it was
mild.
the Erskine.
Oh, Erskine Bridge Hotel.
Yeah, get
Sorry,
your bridges
Erskine
mixed
Bridge
up. Yeah.
Aye. Yeah, and I got my drums set up in about 15 and a half seconds.
Is it true, right? Because Chris has told me that story before, but I've never heard it from your perspective.
Okay.
Is it true that there was one... It may have even been this gig where you were singing, playing bass, and operating the lights, and telling Chris what the songs were all
Oh,
at the
yeah.
same time?
Aye,
Was that a fairly common occurrence?
That was a fairly common occurrence, I think.
Yeah, I did 3 gigs with that band. There was a run of gigs. 3 were your usual dep at the time wasn't available, and Ben hadn't started,
Mm-hmm. That's right.
so I filled in for 3 gigs, and it was something to behold.
Yeah.
It was something to behold to watch because it was like some sort of tap dance, bass playing, singing, directing magic.
Beautiful.
It was like, how the hell is one human doing all that?
Yeah.
I think I don't know how I ended up doing it. I think I just always wanted to kind of better things, I suppose. And at the time, you wouldn't get anyone else in to do sound and stuff and all that. So I always treated it as more of a kind of hobby than
Mhm.
a job a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Because I just kept buying more gear, more and more PA gear, and more lighting gear, and I kept changing things, and just it's like my motto in life is there's always a better way.
Aye.
It's just like kind of
Well, you kind of made
keep
yourself
going.
indispensable. Eh? 'Cause
yeah,
no one
yeah.
else
Not
could do it.
intentionally, but yeah,
Aye,
pretty
aye,
much what
but
happened.
like,
Yeah.
aye, like no, and I get it. When you buy the gear,
Mm-hmm.
you work it.
Yeah.
Like I work the mixer
Yeah.
Yeah.
when we play because it's mine, and it won't happen if someone else does it.
And you know what you're doing with it as well.
Well,
so. Yeah.
I could turn it on and I can plug some mics in.
But yeah, it always came from that, and I kind of I'd seen so many wedding bands in the past and that, and it's just like the 4 flashy lights with the pure Epifit kind of thing and all that. And I always hated that, and I was like, no, it's got to be something a bit more fancy than that.
Aye, a bit of a show.
Bit classier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just ended up. I would spend all the money I made buying more PA gear, buying more lights, and just kind of keep on going. So yeah, I ended up with like a crazy amount of stuff that you would never usually get with the wedding band. So,
But then it sounds great, so
Yeah.
that's the flip side. Did you let the drummers that were playing like make their own drums, or did you do that for them?
They would generally make their own drums. Yeah, we didn't fully make up the kit a lot of the time. Though. Most of the venues we did were kind of smaller and that, so you'd get like a kick mic and an overhead pretty much most of the time, if that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But generally I had to set up all the PA lights, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a lot to do in an hour.
Yeah, yeah. It was
Typically.
touch and go sometimes. Yeah,
Aye.
I'd get to the point whereby it was like just ready to start the first dance, and I hadn't even plugged in my bass, and I'm like,
Yeah.
right, okay,
Uh-huh.
panic.
Yeah,
Bass
yeah.
was kind of always like an afterthought
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of thing, you know.
Which
Everything
hadn't
else
tuned and
yeah,
you know
Yeah.
all that stuff.
yeah,
And then the rest of the band are kind of like,
yeah. Hurry up, Gordon. Yeah,
Aye.
you get
You're just like, yeah, cool, just set up the whole stage for you, that's fine.
I got quicker and quicker when the guys in the band obviously got better at doing stuff. So
Aye.
yeah.
yeah, it's a pretty daunting
Okay.
prospect.
When you're setting up the PA, do you like help or do you like to get it all done yourself? Because I know from my experience, if I've tried to help someone set up a PA, they have a certain process they go through.
Oh no, I like help. Yeah,
You like help?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Especially carrying things in, but you know the
Yeah.
actual kind of setup of it. It depends who's doing it. You know, if they don't know the setup, then I prefer to do it myself because it is quite a kind of not a complex setup we've got, but it is quite. There's a specific way everything has to go,
Right.
and the way it all gets plugged in and stuff. If you don't do it properly, you can kind of knacker things quite easily. So.
I remember one of the first gigs we did, there was specific XLR cables. They were like 6 pin or something on some mics, and it was like, I'll do those. It was a microphone you had, and it was.
Oh, that's the wee
and
capture.
I was
mics,
like
yeah.
always terrified of breaking those because if you put them in like Yamaha have one on the MS45, if you put them in the wrong way, they're gubbed, man. And
Which you've done.
I have done.
So yeah.
Shame.
But it's like setting your drums up.
Yeah.
So if, like you know, I don't let anybody set my drums up.
Except from your wife.
Well, because she's a drummer.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't let a guitar player do it in the same way that I probably wouldn't set up guitar gear. I would plug it in the wrong channel, or I would, you know, it's the same principle, I would assume.
I mean, I've set up drums many times at gigs, so I'm used to that as well. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, but it's the same you know, like at the end of the night, I don't by the time you've explained how to pack your hardware bag, you've packed your hardware bag.
Yeah.
You know, people are like, oh, you get it with depths if they come in and they want to help.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool. Well, I'll
Yeah.
just get it, you know.
And it's not in like a standoffish way. It's just like you have a set way of doing it.
Of course you do, because it'll get you out the door quicker.
Yeah, true.
You know, it's like all about getting out the door,
Yeah.
you know, as quickly as you can.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we thought we would put like just a bunch of questions together. Eh? Do you want to start, man? Have you got some stuff that we can start with?
Talking of that, when you're setting up stuff, as drummers, if we're turning up to a venue, we're not lucky enough to have a Gordon Ferguson to make us sound beautiful and magical. We have to set up a lot of it ourselves. So, and obviously, as a drummer, getting handed a case of microphones can sometimes be a bit kind of a daunting process. You're just kind of going through muscle memory and all that. So, what are some of the mistakes you've noticed of a drummer? A, miking up their setup, and B, what are things that they can do to improve it?
It's kind of a difficult one. I mean, drummers generally, I think they have this conception that they have to have something to kick drum and something to snare, which is it's never really the case. I mean, depending on the venue you're in, you'll need a kick drum mic pretty much universally if you want a bit more oomph out front. Snares generally are the loudest thing ever in the room. And I've seen so many folk
Especially if Big Dave's hitting it.
making up a snare drum. I'm just like, what? There's absolutely no need for that most of the time, you know, and then crank it up through the PA and you're like, no, because you're just making it harder for whoever's doing sound out front, you know, a lot of the time. If the room warrants it, then great, you know, but I would always be more inclined to more kick drum, and have very little snare through the system most of the time. You know, you're generally always fighting against drums in most rooms.
Right.
So it's a different situation if you're using in-ears a lot. You would want like everything mic'd up as best you can, or use like maybe something like EAD10, that kind of thing would be ideal. But I don't.
Did you learn that the hard way? Or was it something you kind of already knew going into setting up mics and stuff?
Something I kind of already knew, you know. I think most gigs when I was doing sound from the stage, it would just be a kick mic, and occasionally an overhead. We never had any ears or anything like that back in the day.
Totally.
So I mean, it was a case of that. If it was a marquee or something like that, you could maybe go to town a bit because the drums are so dead anyway.
Right.
So it's always good to have as many mics in the kit as you can, get as much out front as you can. But that's the only situation I would say that is really, really important to have that snare mic and everything mic'd up if you can.
Right. Just kind of going off that, like, so you even mentioned it there about drums are different, and depending on the room, or like if it's a marquee, like, do you have if you walk into a venue and you're like, you look at the room, do you kind of know how you're going to make the kit instinctively from that, or do you kind of try things and see what works?
Well, it's kind of different now because the band I work with now, Killer City Sound, they're all in ears, so everything kind of gets mic'd up the same way pretty much every time because it's pretty consistent, and they can do all their own in-ears and stuff. So it would generally always get mic'd up as normal. So that's pretty sort of standard now. But if I was making up a band from scratch, I would very much do it based on the room, you know. I would see what I actually need for the room, you know. And generally 9 times out of 10 a kick mic's probably all you need, depending on the room, you know. Yeah. You're always fighting against drums. It's a strange thing. You're always kind of trying to balance things to the drums. It's never. It's very rare you need the drums louder.
I can't imagine drummers help either, because they probably don't think about it. I certainly didn't for the longest time. It didn't even occur to me that I was the loudest person on stage. Oh, yeah. Because guitarists have a volume button. Yeah. So it can go louder. So just to me, it always felt like that, you know, really juvenile battle between guitarists and drummers. But I would never occur to me that it's just the acoustic sound of my instrument.
Yeah. It's like you can always turn the drums up when it's mic'd. You can't ever turn it down. Yeah. You know, so you're always pushing everything else to try and not compensate, but to try and actually work alongside the drums to balance it off, you know. So, yeah.
I mean, how many times have we done events in here and you've like, just pulled the snare right out?
Oh, yeah. It's same in the old shop as well. Yeah. It would generally be, you'd have a rider and stuff, you would make everything up for like years and what have you, but out front, you'd probably just hear on track, kick drum, and maybe a little bit overhead.
I think digital gear got so good as well to help things like that. You know, if you're talking about making up a band from scratch, there'll probably be some sort of preset saved for certain rooms. You know, so he just hits a button and it's all done. You know?
Yeah, I know. I certainly sort of have that, not specifically to that room, but you've got a kind of general, kind of like setting that you kind of work on, so you know kind of where it's sitting at, and then you can kind of tweak around it. We generally we never sound check anymore. I'm actually there just to explain about the band I work with, Killer City Sound. I am the sound and lighting guy. I don't play anything, so that's given me a lot more freedom to actually go out front and operate lights a bit better and stuff and all that. So that's been a really good thing. It's kind of a selling point of the band that you actually get someone dedicated to make it look and sound as good as possible. So in terms of that, it's negated things we don't need a sound check anymore, because it's pretty much not ready to go, but I can always sort of tweak it sometimes. It's a bit like first dance is a sound check, you know, and it's kind of like no panic sometimes, but generally it's pretty much there or thereabouts, and it's a case of just kind of tweaking it for the room or what have you, you know. So
I guess it helps that you're always working with the same people more often than not as well.
Yeah, most of the time doing the same people. Yeah, you get depths and things like that, obviously. Yeah, who aren't quite as used to the way of working and aren't used to any ears and things like that. But you kind of get used to it pretty quickly. So I think as well, having someone there to actually do your in-ear sound and actually kind of tweak it the way you want it, rather than you just kind of fighting against.
Well,
Like try to get everything as loud as possible.
Total
you know?
treat, because Gordon did a gig that we played last year. It was Gail, her best friend got married, so we booked Gordon because Gail was like, "Can we get Gordon for the gig?" Because it's a real special friend, so we wanted to make it something else. It was a great treat to not have to think about any of that crap.
Yeah.
Because I'm not that. I'm my knowledge of that stuff's less than rudimentary.
Yeah.
So it just like, can I get a little bit more bass, and it's just there, and it's just it's in stereo, and it's there's space in the sound because he's managed to put enough EQ in it. He just knows what to do. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, it was always a kind of scary one when I was playing as well, and you're having to play a first dance that you hadn't ever played before with the band, and you've just kind of learned it in the van the way to the gig, that kind of thing. And then you've just had to set everything up, and then something's maybe going wrong on that. It's just
that's horrendous.
panic stations. You have no idea how it's going to sound out front.
It's horrendous.
And I think as well, if you're actually playing in the band and you're doing sound, you never hear how the sound evolves throughout the night.
No.
You just kind of get it set at a level at the start, but as the night goes on, things get louder, things change. The crowd gets drunker and everything. I think it helps to have someone that actually will change based on the environment and what actually happens.
Of course, because you start the second half 20 dB louder than you started the first half.
Yeah, totally.
Just because of the natural energy is going to change.
Course,
the crowd's into it, so therefore you're into it. You end up playing a bit louder. Totally,
Because you've been at the sweet buffet as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Hundreds of sugar in that
Buzzing,
tube. Buzzing, ready to go for it. Yeah.
Did you? So you played bass and did sound first. What came first?
Piano, actually. Played piano before I played bass. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I started playing piano when I was like 4 or something.
Wow.
Crazy like that. And that was kind of what I did at school and everything. But at school, I was always the guy sitting in the music room cupboard, which is where the one computer. It was like an old Mac Classic or something like that. They had.
Wow.
That was like the thing back then. Try to use Cubase and try to learn that. And when we got to the point where you could actually record audio on it, it was like, wow, this is amazing. Yeah. So you're just sitting there like using Cubase and recording stuff and all that, and I would just sit there for hours and hours after school,
just working it
all out and stuff. It's completely changed now how it all works and everything. I'd probably be scared to go back to it, but that was always something I always did when I was at school and that as well. So sound was always a thing. Live sound I actually got into much later.
Oh really?
Yeah, it wasn't something. I think it was actually not so much just the wedding band, but just in general, because I could work a mixing desk. Yeah, I would end up behind the mixing desk having to do sound, that kind of thing, So
you kind of naturally just went into
almost. And then it was from there. It was just kind of trial and error and work it out as I went along, So that's kind of.
I think trial and error is a big theme for a lot of that scene. If you like, just figuring it all out. Certainly, I can empathise with that completely. Just trying to figure it out. Is really daunting to have to do the two. Did you ever get? Is it something you get used to? Or is it something you got used to? Because I don't think I'm ever used to it. I don't think I'll ever get used to it.
I did get used to it. I think I got used to it quite quickly because at first, when I was just playing bass, the lights were just doing the flashy thing. Right. Sound wise, you could kind of tweak things and stuff, but you never really knew what it sounded like out front. But I think because muscle memory and you're so used to playing the same tunes over and over again. I think I could play like Brown Eyed Girl in my sleep quite easily on any instrument, including drums, probably. That I think as well. It just kind of, I think it just gave me something to do as well. It made it a bit more exciting for me rather than just turning up and playing bass. I mean, I love now kind of going and doing depths for bands playing bass where I'm just playing bass. Yeah. Because it's just like you see everything that's going on, everyone's running about trying to fix things and all that. I'm like, all right, okay, I'll just plug my bass in. That's me. I'm ready to go. You
don't have to worry about that stuff.
And it's great to just kind of like think back to the old tunes and all that sort of stuff. And, oh yeah, I may have played that once. I think I can probably do it. And then you're just kind of winging it and stuff like that.
The sort of grey matter,
but it is there. It's still there, So it is good to be able to do that now and not have to worry about that sort of side of it. But then I enjoy doing I think I have done gigs with Killer City where I've played bass, lights and sound, but it's not set up for it anymore, and it's pretty.
Yeah, because it's
hard work.
I think you should probably explain that when Gordon did the lights, it was a foot controller.
Yeah, a Behringer foot controller with a wee mini laptop.
but now it's
DMX.
all a laptop or iPad.
Yeah,
run.
it's all touchscreen driven and stuff now.
So it's like
Wow.
you need 3 or 4 hands to do it the same way now.
Yeah.
It's great when I get someone out of depth for me for the gigs. I'm like, oh yeah, and you're doing lights as well, and they're just like, what?
Yeah,
What?
yeah, totally.
But they get the hang of it. It's just pressing buttons.
Yeah.
Really, a lot of the time.
And I guess that's kind of you as well. You've made it. that
Yeah,
kinda simple
I've made it.
as well.
I've tried to make it as idiot proof as possible.
Yeah.
Not saying, not saying some guys are idiots. Sorry guys, I just meant in terms of doing lights, it's a completely different.
Yeah,
thing,
absolutely.
You know?
That's a lot of different language.
Yeah.
So then, obviously, you've got everything set up for the gig. Everything's good to go. But then you realise, or someone from the venue comes up and says, "Wait a minute, just to let you know, there's a sound limiter."
Yeah, just pack everything up and go home. That's what I'd like to do, but
Done.
we're kind of working around sound limiters a bit better now because you've got all sorts of tech like the TM6, silent strokes. When Jamie, the drummer, we did a gig recently where it was all silent stroke heads, TM6, and just regular cymbals. And that's controllable and it sounds good. You know, it does sound like a proper drum kit. It looks like a drum kit on the stage as well. But that's the only way we've kind of found to do it. Even the issue I've got with sound limiters is that they're actually measuring the sound in the room rather than outside the room.
Yeah.
You know, I think these things should be measuring the sound level out with the room.
Absolutely.
To have a microphone right above the dance floor measuring like maximum 85 decibels, which this is probably not far off 85 decibels. We're sitting in here talking. It's just unworkable all the time. You will never get a drum kit to be that quiet.
Yeah, taking your
without
bin
any
out hits 85 dB or something crazy.
Yeah,
you know,
without it completely losing all kind of energy, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's much more controllable when you. I mean, speakers I've got a really directional anyway, which is good. So as long as you don't have that much kind of like acoustic noise, you can focus it right on the dance floor and make it loud on the dance floor, but quiet out with the room.
Yeah.
But if you've got someone playing drums and as they would as normal, not even battering hell out it or anything like that, it's going to be too loud for the room. It's going to be too loud for the limiter, and then it's all digital gear and lights and all that. As soon as it cuts off, you'll need to wait 10 minutes and the light's heating up again to come back on. You need to wait in the desk rebooting, hope it's not knackered, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's it. Because that can happen so easily.
And it's becoming more and more of a thing, so we're just having to adapt to it, you know. I think a lot of folk are.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done some pretty horrendous gigs, man, where you actually end up just the soul leaves your body halfway through the gig because you just can't do it. I mean, I had for the longest time worked with my wife as well, and vocalists can actually sing above a limiter. She's having to control her breath in a completely different way and has different sort of concerns than all we have to do is hit them quieter or make them electronic. You know, we don't have to worry about anything past that because after that it's out of our control. If there's a volume switch on it or if there's someone to do it, you know, we just hit them. That's it. You know, but singers have got and sound engineers have got a hellish time, man.
It's the strangest thing though when you've got everything like electronic drums, everything's deguide. So everyone's on in-ears, no monitors, and you just turn the volume down. It's just the weirdest thing, you know. All you hear is a bit of singing and some like light hitting in the drums.
Yeah.
And like
Footsteps on the stage and stuff. You can hear all that stuff. You know?
But then it is kind of different because it's a different way of mixing as well because you're basically mixing it almost like a record, pretty much, rather than just fighting the room. So it is good in that respect as well, you know. You can make it sound really good.
I would assume then you get more headroom.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Aye.
You know.
But everything is a lot quieter.
Yeah.
Because you're not fighting against anything.
Yeah. I know that cymbals sit out with the frequency usually of a limiter, depending on a limiter, I think.
Cymbals don't seem to trigger limiters, so we tried like the electronic cymbals and all that, but they just never sounded right. They never sounded genuine, you know.
Yeah.
So that's why we just did it with the triggers, kick snare, a couple of toms, and then just normal cymbals, and it seems to work. It seems to get everything, you know?
You showed me the video, and it because you showed me the video for people who aren't aware. The video basically went from the drummer's perspective, where you could hear real cymbals but just mesh heads. And when Gordon walked out from in front of the PA, you wouldn't have been able to tell.
No.
And when you showed me a bit of a song as well, and it just was absolutely seamless. You wouldn't have been able to tell at all.
Yeah, some of the digital sounds created now, both for drums and guitar, are outrageous. You know, our guitarist uses a Kemper, and those things are like, those are amazing. Those things, they're amp profilers. You can download Eddie Van Halen's amp if you want, and it sounds legitimate.
Sounds like that. Yeah.
So do you have a sort of live miking process Are you know, some drummers get really OCD about how they set things up. Have you got a similar idea where it has to be certain mics done first, and is there a mixing process if you're doing a full kit? You know.
Not necessarily, no. I like everything to be as discreet as possible. So, like for the mics and the toms, it's like the wee Beta 98 mics, which is the wee gooseneck ones. We were doing Chris Coleman, I think it was a couple of years ago or something, and I'd clamped all the mics onto the drums and stuff and what have you. But the way I do it is, it's quite a long gooseneck, so I don't know if you can imagine, it's quite kind of long like this. So most folk would just clamp on the top rim and just have it kind of like looped back, so it looks a bit kind of silly, but I always clamp them on the bottom and run it up. Chris Coleman, the kind of,
I was delighted.
I actually thought he was going to like slate me for doing it at first, because like, who made this kid up? You know, I'm like, oh, okay. And he goes like, and he came and shook my hand and all that.
Man that knows what he's doing.
I remember I caught that on video, and I stopped filming just when he went, oh my god, who mic'd the toms? And I thought, I'm going to turn this off in case like this doesn't go well, and then thankfully caught the rest of it, just cheering.
But yeah, just stuff like that. Try to keep everything as discreet as possible. All the mics I've got are clip-ons, even the overheads. I actually stick them under the cymbals and clamp them onto the stands, just for ease of setup most of the time. Plus, it saves extra mic stands and all over the top and all that, and it sounds pretty good. I think if you were recording it and doing it really, really well and stuff, you would want overheads, but generally as well, you get kind of a bit less spillage from the drums.
Yeah, and Thor does
well.
that. I remember seeing when we went to see LTA, I was like, I can't see his overheads at all, and speaking to him, he was like, yeah, they just clip onto the stand. And
it works pretty well. So.
Kind of principally the same way that the EAD works.
Yeah,
with
the
everything
mic's
being
kind of
mic'd
in
from the centre
position,
and mic'd out. Do you have even like a hierarchy of how you run it through the desk?
It's just the typical channel 1 bass drum, kick mic. There's kick in, kick out. So there's 2 mics usually on the kick. Beta 91 inside and an Audix D6 outside. So they're always first. Then we run top and bottom snare mic as well. Sorry.
Why not?
But do you know, it makes such a difference, especially in in-ears. And Jamie McGrory, drummer as well, he notices it. And I actually find as well out front, I use more bottom snare mic than top snare.
All right,
really?
Yeah, I just because you get a bit more snare noise from it. That's right. You know, it's just a weird thing that I've ended up doing. You know, I don't know why. I just prefer the sound from it. You know, and I think in ears as well, Jamie's he's got them kind of really well balanced in that as well. If you think about it, if you're close mic in the top, you're not really getting much of the snare from the bottom.
So it can be thin sounding.
That's why you can get a lot of ring from the snare as well. But if you kind of fatten it up with the bottom, it works pretty well. Toms is just usually only took a couple of toms anyway, so they're just mic'd up with the 98s and gated essentially, you know. Just to kind of keep the noise floor down as best as possible. And then underheads, as I call them, just the EKG C391Bs are the line audio ones that you use.
Oh yeah, they're great, man.
Which are excellent mics.
Like 90 quid or something.
Plastic things, but they sound great, you know. So
I think we even used them for like the first few episodes of the podcast as well.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Those little ones,
CM1s, CM3s.
CM3s, they're a Swedish company, aren't they?
Yeah. They've been
the
great.
clarity's amazing.
Use them most, and then we started putting a mic on the hi-hat now as well. So it's basically just in line. The first 8 channels of the desk are always drums. So there's another couple of extra channels when Jamie brings some extra drums, which I haven't really kind of fixed in. So they end up on channels further down, but they hardly ever get used. So
did he not bring his like 10-piece of Vistalight?
He did once.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think I've got a video of that. Yeah,
Brilliant.
That took a long time to make up. Thankfully, it wasn't a wedding.
Yeah.
We didn't have 45 minutes to set up, so yeah.
Total riser himself, just for drums.
Yeah. Did sound good though, so yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
Where are we?
That's amazing.
Where are we? So, you've done what? 90% of the clinics?
Yeah, probably.
Engineered about 90% of the clinics. Do you have a favourite?
I do, yeah. There's a few that I really enjoyed doing, like Steve White, the very first one we did in the old shop. Old shop.
Yeah, but before we
moved in, yeah.
And
I remember
that.
There was a kind of...
And it was a Mapex night, wasn't it? He was playing Mapex.
Yeah, there was a kind of element of kind of... Is anyone going to come and kick us out of here, kind of thing, you know?
Oh man!
But no, that was great. I think just in terms of, because it was kind of empty room and all that, and it sounded kind of really good. I don't think I'd done many before that, so I think for me that was quite a good kind of baptism to get into it and that sort of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Plus, loads of drummers in the room, you know. Everyone's got an opinion how the drum should sound.
Sure.
And no one criticised me afterwards, so I was quite pleased with that. My favourite, though, I think, has got to be Todd Sucherman. Sucherman. Always
I think that's probably a consensus among the staff that were there, that it's probably been the best clinic we've ever held.
I think as well, just until it was in the Hard Rock Cafe, I think it was.
That's right.
Big kit, so hundreds of mics. Had to buy extra mics to actually mic up his kit, which was incredible. But I think it sounded really good, and Todd was dead happy. And
yeah, I mean, it's going to help that these guys can play.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
just help. He gave me a hand to help him sit and put the mic here, do this, that kind of thing, you know. So that was a good one.
Does it help when those guys are really direct?
Yeah, I think so. I think when they know what they want.
Aye, that's what I'm trying to say.
And they've got a specific thing they want to do, and that makes it so much easier for me, rather than me going, do you mind if I put this here or whatever, you know, and kind of you're getting in the way and stuff and all that. But no, he was great and couldn't have been nicer. So.
Yeah, I mean, he's toured the world playing all sorts of rooms, so he will know what it's like when we have an hour to do it. He's not messing around, man. We've got an hour, you know. So let's get it done.
Let's get it done.
You know?
Most challenging, I think, was probably Chris Coleman.
Really?
Yeah.
Which one?
Well, I didn't do the first one.
Right.
It was actually I was involved in the first one because there was we were kind of stretched as to the amount of gear we actually had. And there was a bit of a mix up in terms of what he needed, so that was kind of hands on. Pal Jerry did that when he was doing the first
that's right,
Glasgow Drum Show.
Aye.
But the last one there we did at the Glasgow Uni, yeah, that was just, I think just because everyone was kind of running late and not our fault incidentally, but I think just to try and get everything set up the way you wanted it and all that as well. And obviously the pressure of all the folks sitting outside, that was tough.
Right.
But
God, I'd forgotten all about that actually.
I
I mean,
mean, it was a great night, and it went on for hours.
Aye,
It did.
It
Very much became a loving at one point.
Yeah.
you know, Tony got up and played.
That's right, yeah.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah,
He brought the bass out and got people up to
Yeah,
play.
he was loving it. He was
He was
great.
amazing.
Yeah.
So,
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It must be daunting when a guys present like 9 drums and 40 cymbals, you know, to get done like pronto.
yeah.
You know, that I don't know if I could hack it. So I remember even when we did Mike Johnston, we ended up using my mixer for that, and I sort of pushed faders up and down every so often. But it's really daunting, man. Like these guys are proper pros. They're not.
Yeah.
It's not down the dog and duck, and you set your EPA up and you play some songs, man. These guys have got, you know,
like world experience.
Chris as well's got a very specific way he wants his monitors. He wants separate feeds of separate drums and tracks and stuff, and he's in a certain way that works for him because he's done so many clinics and they've basically made a pig's ear of it, and it sounded horrendous in his ears, and so he's got to set where he wants it, and to try and to set that up it can be tough. You're trying to repatch things and all sorts of stuff.
I mean, he had that with heads as well. He wouldn't let anybody rehead the kit
that's right,
because somebody overstretched the heads at a clinic he'd done, and so his drum sounded awful the whole night. You know, so he's got to do it all, top and bottom. You know, and if the heads turn up late, then that's your back against the wall right away.
And his kit sounded great that night, and I think the toms especially. Yeah. Like when they were mic'd up and everyone's just like, wow, that is incredible. You know,
That performance is what sold me on that kit.
There you go.
So there you go. And also your fine sound engineering work also as well sold it. Absolutely
excellent. Yeah.
So how do you deal with that then? If for example with Chris Coleman, he's got a specific way he wants things done, like where do you even start with that? How do you even process all that?
It helps to get the rider and get the actual tech spec they need. And then from that you can just you can then go, because it's a digital mixing desk and that as well, you can actually go and set it up in advance, so you can like have you can get all the kind of channels already preset, so you know exactly where you're plugging everything in, you know where everything's got to come out, so you can kind of work away and do all that kind of routing stuff to start with. But then like I think Chris Coleman, he had a specific mic he wanted to use, which was his own stuff, and that
because he used a radio mic.
Ended up that was a different connector and stuff, so you're running about trying to find things to be able to plug it in. We got it working. It wasn't perfect, but we got it working. So there's always going to be stuff like that at the last minute that kind of
was there not a rider issue as well or something where you get these old riders Sonar sent to the wrong rider? Do you remember?
There was something like that.
So we had the back against the wall right away because we were on the back foot because we didn't know, you know, so you couldn't prep for it.
Yeah, it always helps to get the right tech ready
Yeah,
as well.
Yep.
But yeah, you can do so much preparation in advance now, so that's the benefit of digital desk, I
Yeah.
suppose.
That's at least
You
the
can
first
kinda do
hurdle
it,
dealt with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it's just kind of working it out on the night, essentially.
Yeah.
There's always going to be other stuff that you can't prepare for.
Yeah.
And it just helps to just be like on the ball, and if they want something, just make sure they get it. That's it.
Is that a thing of like when the crowd comes in, the sound changes the sound of a room changes? Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So like you lose top end, you lose bottom end.
If you imagine like if the room's full of bodies, then it's kind of it's not so much specifically top end or bottom end.
Right.
It's just
The sound moves in a different way.
it just I'm trying to think the best way to explain it. It's more dense, so
Right.
like you're getting less ring from the room. It sounds maybe slightly quieter. You always end up having to crank it slightly more. I wouldn't say I would put any more top end or anything like that. I think generally just when you've actually got more folk in the room, it actually makes things sound better.
Right.
Because it's denser. The more fabric, the more mass you have in the room, then it does help.
It seems odd then that we kind of sound check in empty rooms.
Yeah, I know. It's very weird.
And then fill it with 200 people.
I used to play in a band that did some basic touring stuff and all that, and there was one venue down, I think it was in Manchester, where the engineer was going to start with the singing, and he got the vocalists up first and sound checked them, and then left the mics on all the way through the rest of the sound check, purely because he can then control and see what's coming through the vocal mics. So like they were always on during his sound check, so he could compensate for the drums, bass, guitar, all that kind of stuff, and how it's going to sound coming through the vocal mics, because you never think about that.
No.
Yeah.
The vocal mics are picking up everything on stage all the time. It's very rare. You can't really gate a vocal mic without it sounding really unnatural. So yeah, that was, and I was kind of like, oh,
that's new.
That's
mind blown
interesting.
a little bit. I was kind of like, that's actually makes so much sense to be able to do that.
Do you ever use things like boundary mics for in-ears?
We have tried them. Yeah, it's difficult to get it in a position whereby it's so far enough away from the speakers and all that, because of smaller venues and stuff like that. Generally, the guys don't really need it. They don't pick up a massive amount of crowd noise.
Right.
Anyway, most of the time it's going to be just folk dancing.
Yeah.
And bouncing off the ground, that kind of thing. So you don't get an awful lot of cheering and all that kind of stuff at a wedding. You do a wee bit, but
Depends on how drunk they are, I suppose.
Yeah. I don't think they really kind of need them. I think like because they're close enough to the crowd anyway, the vocal mics and the overheads and all that are picking it up a lot of the time anyway. We have done it though, and it has made a bit of a difference. But I think you really need to kind of push them to kind of. Well, the more you push them, the more you're going to get the sound of the room plus the PA and all that as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Paul tells me that you're kind of renowned for having the tidiest stage on the planet. Right? So, according to Paul. So, I've not even told you about this.
Okay.
Yeah, this is.
I have prepped something.
It's news to me as well.
All right, let's prep something. We've got.
So this for those who aren't watching, I've just produced an XLR cable that is in a sorry state,
and it's one of mine as well.
Can you show us the correct way to wind one of these up?
Because there's different methods and ways to do this.
I got crucified on a gig with Gordon for doing it the wrong way one night, and to be fair, it wasn't Gordon that crucified me. It was Nicola.
Do you know what? This might actually be too far
Is it
gone.
too long? I did try and find a smaller one, but
the way I generally do it is kind of
the accepted method.
What you do is you kind of twist it as you put it round.
Right.
So you're kind of twisting it with your thumb and your forefinger there each time you do it.
And it creates a perfect loop.
Yeah. Pretty much. I try and get it as I don't know if you can see that there. so you're not getting it. You can look at how twisted this cable is. I mean, inside there, look at that's the internal wiring's all twisted inside that.
Oh, see, now I feel I haven't put that together. Someone else has done that with my gear. Thanks, guys.
There is another method though, which involves doing it that way.
Oh, the overhander.
It's like you still twist it, but then you do like an underhand thing. your cable's rubbish, Chris.
Yeah.
My pal Jerry taught me that one, so when you actually drop it, it just comes right out, and it's not getting twisted at all.
I did one of the first gigs I ever did with Gordon. I did the really bad roundy elbow thing, and the singer Nicola went mental at me.
Yeah.
That's like a no for everyone who is
absolutely.
cabling. Do not cable it round your elbow and wrist. It's not.
It's actually to the point now they teach this stuff in college. I got taught how to do this.
So
in
did
college.
I, and if we did it wrong, they threw it all back on the floor and made us do it again.
Gordon just threw it on the floor.
What was I going to ask you? Aye, there's a difference of drums in different rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's considered enough by drummers? Do you think it's something they think about, how their drums will behave in different rooms, and how do you have to cope with that as an engineer?
I think it's something they do have to think about. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're playing drums in a massive, big, empty room, like a big church or something like that, which is designed to amplify everything, make everything louder. As soon as you hit the snare and you've got like a 4-second reverb or something like that, it doesn't make sense to batter hell at the drums, because you don't need to for a start. You can hit them a bit quieter and it'll still carry. Stuff like that as well. And if it's in a very, very small room, yeah, obviously you have to play quieter, because if you don't, the louder you hit the drums, just the louder everything has to be.
Even things
it
like
ends up just
the way they play, like if you've got a 4-second reverb and guys are still trying to play all their ghost notes, that's just going to be awful.
Completely lost, yeah.
Aye, and if you put a mic on that, it's going to sound minging. I can't imagine it's going to sound very nice at all. Really,
you wouldn't even have the mic going through the PA. I don't think in that situation. No.
It's off.
It's a funny thing, because I remember talking to Paul years ago, and when he played, I think he played at Stirling Castle, and having to sound check when there was a 4-second delay to get to the sound engineer. You just can't go up and play the drums the same way you would normally. You have to let the sound get to the guy.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You know, it's something that, but that kind of, I've never had to think about it like that before. I've never had to think about sound checking the drums like that.
Yeah. Well, I also had the same experience, because I'd done a lot of playing in studios where it's just like, or I was just told, I guess a combination of playing in studios and how I was taught was to just hit the drums hard to get a good sound out of it. Maybe I was poorly taught, I don't know, but to get that out of that mindset in a very small room, like you're saying, like it's quite, I found it really difficult at first, because you don't realise you're just playing the drums how you've been taught to play the drums, not realising that you're actually overpowering everything, because you think, oh, the louder I hit these drums, the better everything's going to sound, but obviously that's not the case, because you're actually making things sound worse because you're playing too loud.
It's dynamics as well, though. You have to be able to play it. It's just tickling the drums or playing with rods, and that isn't the solution, you know, because it's just going to sound weak, and that is just try to play it but still have a bit of groove and a bit of like have it still sounding the same but just quieter. It's a really difficult thing to do. It's not easy, you know. But some drummers are just like full on. It's all, this is how I play. This is it. This is what you get, sort of thing. You know, which is fine. That's just the way it is. But I think
need to work with it.
Yeah, when you're in a kind of a wedding situation or something like that, when you're in a small room, you have to think about it a wee bit more.
Ross Priory or something, where you're in basically a living room.
And then if you got a sound limit as well, and you're just completely
done.
Yeah.
So. Do drummers overplay all the time? Is it like from I'm gonna ask you this from a bass playing point of view now, and I'm generalising.
I would say they overplay more than bass players. I don't know.
So I guess what I get is generally, as a bass player, simpler the better.
Yeah, well, personally, that's what I would say. Yeah, I don't tend to try and embellish too much. I don't. You need to, you know. I think you just want a kind of fundamental
foundation
to build on. That's it, you know. Drummers, they I think drummers get bored quite easily. I mean, they're basically just
we are simple creatures.
when you're playing the same rhythm pretty much for most of the song, you know, you're going to want to do something to kind of keep yourself alert and stuff, you know. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, you know. If it's like total like overplaying all the way through the song, that's way too much.
But
you got to keep it. It's enjoyable for yourself as well, you know.
Yeah, it's a funny thing.
Yeah,
it's a funny thing, because Brown Eyed Girl for the 5th time this week is not going to be exciting, is it? Really?
Yeah, that's it.
I've been guilty of that for ever.
Yeah. We all are.
Aye,
We
but,
all
like-
absolutely are. Aye.
The secret to that is run the band.
All right.
Nobody's going to tell the boss off. Well, that's not necessarily true. Sometimes they tell the boss off.
Sound guy will tell you.
Yeah.
If you could engineer any band,
Like
who would
any
you engineer?
band.
Well, Queen, I think.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
You know?
had a feeling that was going to be an
I
answer.
thought it was
Yeah.
actually going to be Radiohead.
You know what? Radiohead, I think, would be a tough gig for a sound engineer. I mean, they've got so much stuff. 2 drummers now as well.
Yeah, that's right. Aye, Clive Beamer plays.
God,
them
yeah,
now.
that'd be hard work.
Yeah. We are agreed
yeah.
that it's still the best sounding gig, I think.
That was
either of us.
Glasgow Green Radiohead's. What year was it?
2000, I think, or 2001. It was the Kid
Yeah,
A
it
tour.
was it literally sounds like you'd listen to hi-fi, like a big loud hi-fi, and it sounded incredible.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, no idea how they did that, but yeah, that was pretty special. No, definitely Queen. I like Toto as well. I think live sound for them is pretty good as well. You know, they're another one of the best sounding bands I've heard. Again, they're a pretty big setup. You know,
Yeah.
percussion,
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. So that would be
I
quite a
mean, I've never
challenge, you
seen
know.
them, so
But yeah, definitely Queen. Although I think if it was a small venue and it was Brian May with his amps up full, you've got a
he plays
tough
like
night ahead.
AC30s, doesn't he?
Yeah, I went to see Brian May when he was doing his solo stuff at the Royal Concert Hall, and it was when he had it was Cozy Powell had died. I can't remember who it was playing drums at the time, but the tech came on to sound check his guitar, and I kid you not, it was the loudest thing
Wow.
I've ever heard. And it wasn't even through the PA or anything, it was just
Wow.
literally his guitar. I had like 12 Fox AC30 set up. Guy just came on, strummed a chord, and you're like, oh my god.
Whoa.
Yeah, I used to
What
play with
a-
a guy who played
Yeah.
with an AC30, and it's literally the loudest amp on the planet. Because
Yeah.
it doesn't work if it's not loud.
Yeah.
The point of those amps, because they're valve amps, is they're just.
Yeah,
The Darkness played them, but they put them under the stage
Hmm.
Oh, smart.
and mic them from under the stage because they're just too loud, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That must have been horrendous.
Hmm.
Imagine being
No,
the
I
sound
mean,
guy.
it sounded incredible. They had a massive PA and all that, you know. So I was like, yes, amazing. But yeah, that was loud because I think just because of where we were sitting as well, we were basically facing them straight on.
Oh, head on.
Yeah,
Uh,
but no, it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, I still
Yeah.
my hearing's still impaired to this day.
so he plays with a 5p piece as well, doesn't he?
It's like a
Does he
a
really?
shilling
Oh,
or something
Aye,
that,
like
I
an
think it
old,
is, yeah.
an old 5p or something. That's why
Yeah.
that's where his tone comes from.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, so,
that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
aye. Yeah,
So, I mean, what's the best way to phrase this question? 'Cause you and Chris go way back, so Chris perhaps knows the story of how. I hate that. I don't like this phrase, but it's the only phrase I can think of, like how a bass player ends up working in a drum shop.
I actually don't know this story.
Do you not know this story?
No,
Really? I thought you would
no,
have known this
just
story.
Came to work one day and Gordon was here.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Fair enough.
So how does Gordon come to work in a drum shop?
Well, I used to work in McCormick's Music in Glasgow
Oh, right, okay, right.
back in the day.
R.I.P.
Yes, sadly. And I think Paul worked there at the same time. It was kind of a weird crossover thing. I did my work experience there when I was like 13 years old,
Wow.
and Paul was working full time in the shop at that point, right? But he hadn't been there for very long. So he was there kind of full time. I went and did work experience, and then ended up going back. I ended up getting asked to go and work there essentially at weekends, which I did. And I was like, yes, brilliant, you know. And then Paul was still full time. I was kind of part time. But by the time I ended up working full time, Paul had gone part time.
Oh,
So yeah, we
The old
both
switcheroo.
kind of worked there at the same time, but there was a kind of crossover point and stuff and what have you. So I was there for years and years. I think I was there for about 12 years or something like that at McCormick's.
wow.
And what I did there was essentially, and originally working the shop floor, selling everything, you know, guitars,
Yeah.
keyboards,
Because he did sell literally everything.
Yeah.
It's like,
sheet music, occasionally drums and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And then from that, ended up kind of working in the education department where you were selling to schools. And so again, that was
okay.
everything from weird percussion instruments to timpanis, all
Brass
sorts of
right.
stuff, brass, woodwind, all that kind of thing. So I did that, and then this was pre-internet, obviously. You know, that was a
Discount
thing.
for
You know,
cash.
yeah.
this is back in the dial-up days as well. You know, so yeah, I ended up because I had a computer. Essentially, yeah. God knows a bit about web and all that, you know. So I ended up.
Brilliant.
That was me. I ended up like setting up websites for them. It started up the internet department, as it was called back then.
Brilliant.
So yeah, that it took off and what have you, and so yeah,
Didn't you
just
run the
didn't wanna-
warehouse as well?
yeah. Well, that was kind of it was education and internet was kind
Right.
of combined. So yeah, ran the warehouse and stuff. Yeah, it just went from there. So I did that for years. I left briefly to go and do web design and like video production, all that kind of stuff. So I did that self-employed for a few years, and then I can't remember how it came about. It was after I'd been in to see you and you did the depth thing for the band and stuff like that. Paul kind of contacted me out of the blue.
Like 08?
Yeah, something like, I can't remember. God, how long have I been here?
Since 08?
Since 08, yeah. So yeah, it must have been around then. He just got a new website set up, and
I remember that. I remember it, and we were paying like way over the odds for it to be maintained.
Yeah, and initially it was just coming in a couple of days a week to help out put listens on the website and stuff and what have you. So came in, did that was fine. And as you just end up getting more and more involved, found out how much Paul was spending on the website. I was like, no, we can't do that. And it just spiraled from there. Ended up full time. Ended up selling as well. You know, and it's just gone from there and there. And eventually I took over the website, and it's just evolved from there. So now I'm mostly kind of working behind the scenes, looking after the e-post system, website, packing boxes, anything, you know, pretty much any side of it, you know. So
customers probably won't really, or anybody that's not really worked in a drum shop won't really know, but what's the biggest challenge of running a website for a drum shop?
For a website for a drum shop?
Is it just things like the sheer volume of stock, things like spares?
Yeah, because we are very bespoke in what we do. Like we do a lot of second hand. We do like so many lines of new stuff and things like that. We've got 2 branches as well.
Yeah.
So try to get a website that can incorporate all that, have like real time stock levels. Yeah. Like integrates with stock feeds from suppliers and all that. There's a lot to it. It's not just like
integrates with social media.
Yeah, you can't just kind of go online, download a bit of software that does it all.
That's it.
There's a lot happens on the website that you would never know about or think about.
Well, even things like you and me, I have been up in the office before, and like I'll turn around and you spent the majority of your day has been spent just getting the site faster. You know, like and it's like. Things like that as a customer you wouldn't even think about. You know, at least I certainly wouldn't think about that kind of stuff. But like, you know, it makes a huge difference.
What's amazing is it's done here.
Yeah,
that still is like the greatest thing, because there's not 12 guys sitting in an office in Hillington that don't know anything about what we're doing. Yeah, you know, I don't think we could run it that way anymore. No. I think the internet's made everything move too quickly. It needs to happen like now. I mean, we would wait 2 or 3 days to get changes done in the past, you know, and you can do changes in 5 minutes. Yeah,
sometimes. Depends how ridiculous the changes Paul wants are. Yeah, I always have this thing whereby Paul says, "Can we try this? Can we do that?" And it's some scheme to do something with the website. So I've then got to try and think, right, okay, how do we do that, you know, and then I think Paul in his head thinks I just like flick a switch when it does. But yeah, I'll be like, oh, you know,
send it to the internet,
and it's like it's like Cobra Kai when he's like that. Yeah, send it to the internet. So it's kind of like I don't know. I always just kind of think of how can we do this as quickly as possible, but make sure it actually works. You know, it's not like just flick a switch. You know, so so many times I'll be like, you know, that's quite a tough thing to do, you know, I'll go through all the stuff, and then like 10 minutes later I'm like, right, so I've done that. So Paul now has this thing whereby he thinks I just over exaggerate everything all the time. So when he asks me to do something that's going to take like a week for me to do, if he gets it back within a day, he's quite happy. So yeah.
What's the weirdest thing about being a bass player in a drum shop?
It's not a weird thing, but you know, obviously I used to work in the shop floor, and I do know a lot about. I like to think I know a lot about drums. You know, I've been around them for so long, even prior to being here and what have you. You know, and I do feel as though I have a lot of knowledge I can impart to folk. Yeah. But it's always that question: what do you play yourself? Aye. That always gets me, and I'm just like, oh man.
PlayStation should be your answer.
I'm like found out again. Like, I'm not actually a drummer. You're not a drummer, and then it's the whole, oh, what are you doing in a drum shop? I'm like, oh man, if I had £1 for every time I had that conversation with a drummer,
paid your mortgage.
But no, other than that, I mean, everyone kind of, there's a bit of synergy when you see you're a bass player. You know, oh right, okay, and then you think, is that where rhythm and bass comes from? And you're like, no,
it's not, and it's not rhythm and bass.
Yeah, that was back in the day. That's why we changed the name, because I get fed up with folks saying that's of Paul.
People can't spell rhythm.
But yeah, no, it's not a bad thing to have someone from a different. If it was just all drummers, you would just all be kind of amplifying your own
you can
thoughts, you know.
What's great is if someone comes in and asks us of a live implication or something, you know about the drums in a different way. You know it from an engineering perspective.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So,
or even electronics.
Yeah.
The amount of electronic questions or things you've solved. You know, how to rig it. You know, how to rig monitors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's good to have that, I think.
Absolutely, of course.
I think it's good as well just to have someone from a different background that can.
Yeah.
Do you have a favourite brand of kit that you've worked with?
Yes.
That is a very loaded question.
It's not, no, it's a.
No, because I know where you're going with it.
When you say favourite, you mean the best sounding kit?
Well, what is your favourite kit that you engineered?
Sonar, all the time. Yeah,
oh, really?
Much, yeah.
Wow.
Sonar, SQ2 or even SQ1, like Chris Coleman's kit sound amazing. But as well as that, Pearl as well, the sort of high-end reference, Masterwork stuff as well is always sounding incredible. The best sound bass drum I've ever heard was a Pearl reference.
Right.
22-inch bass drum. It was a red thing that we had at the old shop. And it just, I don't know, it's just the way it was tuned or whatever. When you hit it, it just...
What was that bass drum?
Yeah. It just had that sound to it, you know. Todd Zuckerman's kit sounded incredible, you know. I think it's just anything that's really, really well set up, tuned well, and that's it, you know.
I was going to say, can you qualify that? What makes it for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I've heard other kits as well that sound great, you know. Jamie had a Cravioto kit for years, which sounded incredible, but it was the loudest kit in the world. Really? And it's obviously steam bench shelves and all that sort of stuff. So
sort of untamable. And
it was weird. I always thought this just seems really, really loud, but then other drummers would come in and play it as well, and I'm like, they would be like, "This is louder." Right. And you didn't notice it at first, but it just
there,
just so much louder. So yeah, I think I wouldn't say any particular shell composition or anything like that, because I wouldn't go into that kind of depth of it. But just like a well-made kit with good heads and tuned well, is always going to sound good, you know.
Here's one: do you have a preference of modern versus vintage drums? Have you worked? Because Jamie likes his vintage drums as well, doesn't he? So I'd imagine you've sort of rigged some vintage kits in your time.
Yeah, he's got like I think it's a Gretsch USA custom from like a Gretsch from the 70s, that kind of thing.
And he's got a slinger thing as well.
Yeah, slinger. He's got it's a floor tom he's cut down to like a big deep slinger. That sounds incredible. Right. It's just I don't think he's ever tried to retune it because it's just set so perfectly. Right. It's just a big fat snare sound. It's like. Like you couldn't do any kind of rolls on it. It's basically a side snare, but that just sounds incredible. That, you know.
And he's got some acrylite stuff as well. He's got some old snare drums that he likes as well. Yeah,
I think it's a Birch custom. Is it a Beach custom? I think
he's got a Beach custom. Yeah.
Which sounds great, and it's compact. It's like
2216.
That's 2216. Yeah, and I think 1316 is it?
I mean, he's got all the toms for
that
kit.
I can't remember. He changes 13, it about 14, all the time, 16, but so he's got, it sounds great as well. Yamaha drums always sound great as well. So
just so well made.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, it's a different sort of sound, modern to vintage and stuff. You know, vintage you just tend to a bit more woolly sound, which is fine. You know,
quieter.
Yeah, definitely. So for kind of like gigs where you don't want to be as loud, that would be the kit to go for. You know.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
It's always an education talking about this stuff for you.
Oh,
it's great because I'm still clueless with it all, you know. You don't really do the social media thing, do you? So much?
Not so much.
And then, you don't have an engineering or a live sound
I don't
page
know.
where people can go and
probably look at the band page. It's Killer City Sound, that kind of thing, you know. So,
but if you want to talk to Gordon about all these things, pop in the shop.
Absolutely, yeah.
Drop him an email. You've answered these questions for people before on email loads of times, you know. So if you have any live sound questions or anything like that,
help, certainly.
Give us a
I'm usually through the back somewhere in the shop as well. So.
Making a website fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Adam, take us home.
So obviously you can find us online, www.drummersonly.co.uk. We are a physical shop in Glasgow and Leeds. You can find us online on Facebook at Drummers Only UK, YouTube, Instagram. Obviously, subscribe to the podcast. Thank you for everyone who listens to the podcast as well. Feel free to leave us a nice review. We prefer 5 stars up in this house because apparently that makes a difference. So yeah, and if you've got any inquiries at all, drop us an email, info@drummersonly.co.uk. Maybe you want to ask Gordon some tech questions.
Yeah.
We can do.
And we will see you next time. Take it easy, guys. Thanks very much.